Welcome to the Dr. Remina Panjwani Show, where we're optimizing wellness together. I am your host, Dr. Remina. Welcome to today's episode, where functional medicine and wellness intersect with the powerful conversation about living a life of purpose, resilience, and intentional design. My guest today is Richard Dolan, a visionary leader who has redefined what it means to build a legacy by choice, not by chance. With over 30 years of experience in financial services, wealth management, and real estate investment, Richard is the architect of his urban financial life philosophy, a groundbreaking approach that integrates performance psychology, happiness economics, behavioral finance, and investor resilience. His work and wisdom have transcended industries, reaching some of the most influential figures in the world: former U.S. presidents, billionaires, CEOs, gold medalists, and even members of the royal family. Richard has been a trusted thought partner for artists, athletes, philanthropists, and world champions alike, helping them align success with significance. Get ready for a conversation that will inspire you to rethink how you live, lead, and leave your mark on this world by design, not by default. Welcome back. Today, I'm so thrilled to have an amazing conversation with a true visionary who started in the world of finance, but is now empowering in the human betterment area, Richard Dolan. And I'm super excited because being a physician, a holistic wellness physician, it truly does tie in health, wealth, and worth. So welcome. Thank you so much for taking time today and talking.
Of course, I'm a big fan of yours. So anytime you call and ask for me to be on your podcast, it'd be a pleasure too.
Oh, I appreciate you. So I'm pretty sure everyone knows who you are, but I would love for you to describe what your journey was to get here today. It's such an inspiring and impactful journey that you have. So please take it away.
I think, listen, everybody's got a great story. We all do. All of us have got a great start, middle, and are still up to authoring the end, or at least the means to it. One that leaves you lit up, excited, and with the feeling of can't wait. So for me, I mean, I'm no different from anybody else listening to this. We've all had our trials and tribulations. We've all had crucible moments. I mean, what makes my story probably very unique is only because I think I was a statistical impossibility. I came from a broken home. I dropped out of high school at 16. I was on my own at a very early age. I was inspired to move into the financial services business after watching a movie called Wall Street, where I saw the Gordon Gekko played by Michael Douglas, where greed was good. And that was during the 80s when greed was good. Maybe it's getting cyclical, so it might be coming back given the current state of politics, but that's another conversation for another time. And I was inspired. And then I wasn't inspired by stocks and bonds and mutual funds or the stock market per se. I was inspired by the lifestyle and the what it projected. I saw people of power. I saw individuals with influence, and I saw that these people were really true magnets to money. And I thought that's intriguing because I came from a very poor upbringing and I didn't come from a very high-end state. And I didn't have exactly lots of money, nor did my family have. So to be drawn and attracted to that world, I thought to myself, man, that would be amazing. So that's what drew me to that space. There was no other individual in my life. I didn't have an uncle that was a stockbroker. I didn't have an aunt that sold insurance. We didn't have a neighbor that talked about the stock market. It was a movie. It was a movie that really, had I not watched it, I would have not chosen that avenue to go down that space. And thank God, or dare I say, Oliver Stone and Michael Douglas, and Charlie Sheen, because he played another character on the show, rather the movie. But that's what inspired me. That's what shaped me. So when I entered that space, I started off as a cold call cowboy, making 300 cold calls a day for a stockbroker. And I mean, if you're familiar with making cold calls, we barely want to make a cold call, let alone a phone call, even to family. I mean, my son texts me from upstairs asking for glasses of water. I mean, we rarely just pick up the phone and call someone. So making 300 cold calls back when I first started in the business was really my way to start from the bottom up. And I was lucky. I was lucky to have worked with some real big top performers in the space. I was super lucky to be sent off to boardrooms and workshops in my boss's stead to go learn all I can from this particular speaker or this facilitator or this trainer. And that particular person so happened to have been Bob Proctor. That person so happened to have been Wayne Dyer. That person, this one guy I got to meet and befriend, was this really cool up and coming motivational speaker named Tony Robbins. So what I didn't realize was I was actually getting groomed by what have been come to be known as not just pioneers in the human betterment space, leadership development space, motivational space, but they were the icons of that time, and they didn't know it because it was early. So I started noticing myself not only learning what they were teaching and applying what I was taught. I think I started to, because I was young, I began to embody a bit of who they were. I really liked how Tony Robbins commanded the room. I really loved how Wayne Dyer was soft, kind, and gentle. I loved that Bob Proctor would get very authoritative at certain times. Like I just loved bits and pieces of who they were. And I found myself probably over the 30 years that I've really worked with them and alongside others just like them, have become a real great demonstration of the collective learning that I've done over my years. So, 14 publications. I've been able to teach at universities. I have worked with over 3 US presidents, Oprah, Ellen. I've got 3 NBA championship rings. I've got a very eclectic background, given I'm really in the financial psychology and wealth management space. That's the passion foundation I have. So getting people's relationship right with money, wealth, and worth is not just a psychological one or a philosophical one. It actually is a financial one. And so that's what I really do. What people experience me out as is someone who's a special advisor to CEOs and billionaires, a special advisor to members of the royal family, a special advisor to athletes and actors, musicians, and notable characters of culture and commerce. So because I do that, and that's the profile, they both really work hand in hand. That's what performs some symphony. So, you'll see me on Instagram, or you'll come to a workshop, as how you and I
Mhm.
met through a dear friend of ours, and get to witness what I'm able to do, and then of course embody the very work that I've embodied. But for me, I still think I'm still a student. I'm still a man in development, and I'm okay saying that. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, it's always an ongoing process, and it's amazing the journey you started with and how you're still growing and going, that's how you level up and become better and be more impactful. I
You're
love
right, but aside from success or achievement, aside from actually owning great things and going to many great places, and aside from having such an incredible, boundless amount of possibility and opportunity for myself and my team and my stakeholders, um, probably the greatest catalyst of continued learning and evolution has been my son. Like being a dad, being a parent, has really represenced me to really how little I know. It's like being a parent. No one teaches you how to be one. No one ever gives you the hand guide saying, "Well, now that you've got this little bundle of joy, here's what you need to know." There's no guide. There's no owner's manual. There's no true way of learning it. And although I'm sure there's YouTube videos, and I'm sure there's great TikTok inquiries, and I'm sure there's tutorials, and I'm sure there's an aunt or an uncle, a parent that you can easily lean on and ask, "How would you do this?" The reality is that you kind of, if you get comfortable getting lost, you get to help things along rediscover yourself. So we're real creatures of comfort because we're all really just built to survive. So whenever you put yourself in an unusual perspective, or in an unusual place, or in an unusual spot, you will quickly learn how to manage that space and turn it into safe. And dare I even say, master the space in which you're in and what's ahead. So being a parent to now an 18-year-old son, I mean, it's 18 years it's taken me to really realize how much he's taught me. And not like he's knowing it, it's that he was the catalyst for me discovering new things about life and leadership, myself, and what it means to be an instrument for impact on another human being, starting with myself and my son. So it's a remarkable place to now reflect from.
Oh, yes, that's beautiful. Being a parent definitely challenges you in many ways, and it's unexpected, right? Because, like you just said, you learn from your kids, even them not knowing. I mean, your child is definitely an adult now, and I
Mhm.
love how you share stories of him coming along and
how he's just watches you, inspired by you, and it's really cool to see him see how he's going to develop in his own with such an inspiring.
But as a parent, you realize this, that the saying is so true that when the student is ready to learn, the teacher will appear. So I mean, we've
Yeah.
been parents a long time, and it's not to say that he's never learned, but now at the stage in which he's at and heading into or being in university as he is and interested in being in business as I am, now he asks questions and he wants to attend meetings and he's a part of some of my travels where he'll notice things, he'll observe and he'll comment. But I'm always certain to do one thing. I'll always stop and ask him, "What did you see? What did you learn? And what was it that was new for you to have learned about me that you're glad that you saw or witnessed?" So I'm always going to pause and turn the experience into a learnable event, right? So it's all about context. And I think as parents, as our children grow older, we think that, you know, the parenting is over. We'll always care for them and love them, but no, you
Mhm.
continue to evolve as a human being as long as you're committed to them evolving as one as well. And so that's a journey I'm committed to. I make mistakes. I made one tragic one this weekend, a judgment call I made got me in trouble with him. Not like he and I had trouble, but I got us in a situation where I shouldn't have been in that situation. And without getting into detail, and I know it sounds cryptic, but I simply entered a space of a commercial property where children under the age of 21 should not have been. And so I thought, you know, he's with me and it shouldn't be a problem. But what it created was an altercation. And what I realized was I was upset with myself largely because I shouldn't have been in that situation. I should have gone left rather than thought to myself, right would be fine. No, right's not fine. Not as a father, not as a parent, but especially not because he just simply can't be there. He can be there, but he can't be there. And so I noticed that it's also being a parent is a very humbling experience every day, like every day. You know, so don't take yourself too seriously. I promise you, you're going to screw it up at some particular point if you haven't already.
Oh yeah, I mean, my 2.5 and 6 year old, they remind me every day. But I believe in that instance, what's important is that you also showed Mateo real life situations of being a human and creating errors.
Mhm.
It's okay. And how are you navigating that as an adult? So
Mhm.
even in that mistake, there's a lesson there, like you said. There's always something.
Totally. I mean, as long as you just don't take yourself so damn seriously, I think a lot of us walk the earth thinking that, you know, I'm a living legend in my mind, you know, then, and if you just kind of get out of your own way and realize, no, we're all imperfect, embrace it. That's actually the blessing, not the
Yeah.
curse. And to realize that the moment you recognize you're out of step, you're out of alignment, out of agreement, and or you just simply got something wrong and you're you know just got it downright stupidly wrong. Just say pause for a second. That's on me. My bad. Here's my commitment. I'm never gonna put you in a situation. This was mine to him. I'll never walk into a space without just asking myself twice over, is this the right place for you? Do I have the right reasons to be here? And am I putting you in danger in any way, shape, or form? And that's my commitment. And so of course that just lets me as a parent start saying, all right, well, we just got a little bit more focus. Was got a little bit more focus, and we got a little bit more focus. So it's just not being afraid to get it wrong, because getting it wrong actually does lead you to getting it right.
So true.
Yeah.
Um, well, I have a question for you.
Hmm.
You help create legends and you refer a lot to keepers. So, working with everyone and also in yourself, what is a common mindset block or just habits that you see people preventing to create that health, wealth, and worth success?
Hmm. Hmm.
Help them overcome these.
I mean, for me, you know, you reference the word legends. I mean, you might be taking one term out of a phrase that's often used to describe the kind of special advisory I provide, which
Mhm.
is I help create by design legacies for icons, legends, and gods of commerce and culture. And the reason why we say God, because it's a bit of a charged statement, God. But I mean, I've dealt with the sixth God, which is Drake. I've dealt with other people who relate to themselves as a god of iconic culture or commerce, like Mike Tyson, who believes that he's the greatest thing that's ever happened to boxing. Maybe true, I don't know. So from that reference perspective, from that framework, the biggest and first challenge we always have is that an icon, legend, and god of commerce and culture knows that they're an icon, legend, and God. So getting them out of their own way and having them detach from their attachment to a certain vision, a certain view, or a certain value is the work, because a lot of them have in their minds a very clear idea as to how they want to be revered and how they want to be and how they want to exploit and or conquer, expand or commercialize or optimally monetize their brand, their reach, their IP, their vector, their following, their influence, their resonance, their relevance. But it's like, well, let's do some research. Let's see what the data says. Let's see what the research tells us. Let's see what the analytics provide. And then let's compare notes and see if we're actually on the right track. Because just because you think it doesn't mean it's so. So in terms of keepers, keepers as you refer to them to is a reference I've used to describe what the psychological makeup for people, just all of us have, that really keep us. That's why we call them a keeper. They're the keeper of you being safe. And but sometimes we experience that out as actually feeling small or insignificant or sometimes stuck. A keeper is like that. You remember, if you've ever remembered in a movie or a cartoon, you got the good angel and the bad angel, and they're talking to you in your ears. It's like, I'm about to make a decision, but the good angel says, well, you really shouldn't, so go left. And the bad angel on the other side says, well, you know what, you live only once, so go right. And you're like, and in that moment you decide. Those are your keepers. Like that's like the self-talk inside your mind that talks you in or out of doing things. And usually that doesn't happen unless you've got a choice or there's by chance an opportunity to do something you've never done. So for us, we have keepers. We have keepers that are really conversations, and there's three main ones. And I've given them names so that you can identify them in a moment. And oftentimes when you're trying to do something that's different, unique, it's a stretch, it's unusual, there's danger, or there's a risk that you could get it wrong or fall flat. There's three keepers, the angels, if they were, that would start to appear and say, hey, the keeper of judgment, where that one gets in your ear and says, well, they're going to judge you, they're going to assess you, they're going to critique you, they're going to score you, they're going to grade you. Are you ready to do this? Are you prepared to do this? Are you sure you're going to do this? Because what will they say? What will they think? What will they make it mean for you? So judgment's a big one, especially when it comes to what we think our families think of us, our friends, our colleagues, our coworkers, people we respect and admire, or people we really hope to have the appreciation from and or the acknowledgement of. The second keeper is really the ego, and that's more over here. Like, it's like, am I going to look good? Am I going to get it wrong? Like, am I going to fall flat? Am I going to get it? Am I going to look stupid? Ego's a big one. I mean, ego is like, not doing something unless it's perfect for you, unless you're going to look like greater than you are. And ego sometimes is the one thing that prevents you from kind of stepping up and doing something. You see that with kids sometimes, where they don't want to be on the spot to try something new because they don't want to look foolish, right? So imagine, kids, when we often have said in behavioral child and psychology studies that the ego doesn't get born until many years later. That's not true. I mean, kids have a pretty strong identification of themselves quite young. The last is outright fear. So judgment, what are they going to think? What are they going to say? Ego, like, how am I going to look? I don't want to look bad. But fear is just like a real fear, like fear of I'm gonna fall, like I'm gonna get it wrong, like I'm gonna lose control, I'm gonna get controlled, and fear is real. So one of those three, Jeff, Jeff, that's why we call the three keepers Jeff. Jeff will show up whenever you're about to do something different, do something you've never done, or do something that stretches you beyond what's predictably you. And when that happens, we get stopped. That's why the human betterment business is a multi-billion dollar industry, because we're constantly struggling. It's a tug of war between what we want, what we deserve, what we aspire for, but it's the pullback is into our default position of, hey, stay small, stay shrunk, get stuck, get stalled. That's cool. I mean, we don't want to get judged. You may look bad or you might get it wrong, so let's not do that. So keepers are a big one. Keepers in understanding what just holds you back, whether in health, or whether in wealth, whether in happiness, whether in any domain of your life. If you want something you've never gotten, it's going to take you a little bit of time to get to understand what holds you back. from getting it.
Oh my goodness. Yes. It's so much easier to stay in comfort zones, isn't it?
Well,
But
it's
then you never
predictable.
grow.
Yeah, it's predictable. At the end of the day, it's predictable. I mean, we're not built to succeed. We're not built to go get it. We're not built to be adventurers. Folks, we're not. 3.2 million years, this brain up here, this one little mechanism in between these two ears, it only perfected one act over the 3.2 million years, and that's survive. That's it. Survive to do what? To procreate. That's the purpose of
Mhm.
our existence, to stay young, healthy, and attractive long enough to procreate so you can perpetuate our DNA. That's it. I mean, that's why we peak out by our 30s. That's why, and you're an expert in the space, so you know this all to be true. I mean, everything happens up until about 30. And then we just really technically die just a little bit every day from there on. Why? Because that our purpose is really inside that sweet spot of procreating. I know we can have a debate about, well, what about being happy and what about being fulfilled? Like, those are made up constructs. I mean, I've met a lot of people who've had a very single-handed, off the grid life, interacting with no human beings, and lived a very purposeful life. You could look at Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa, who lived in servitude, and they didn't die with worldly possessions or massive love affairs. They barely had any money to their name. So like you have to ask yourself, well, how did they do that? So you don't have to be a Mahatma Gandhi, and you don't have to be Mother Teresa to realize a fulfilling life. My point is that when it comes to you, you've got to really be able to live your life by design and not default. And if it's going to be by design, you have to ask yourself the question, whose design? Is it my design, or what my mother wants, or what my father wants, or what my wife wants, or what my boyfriend wants, or what my husband wants, or what my kids want, or what my dog expects, etc. It's like just really be conscious of who's the designer, right?
So speaking of design, how would you, what are the habits by design for someone to be that successful and break the habits to get out of the comfort zone?
You know what? That's a great question, Dr. Remina. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what I've learned firsthand is that I made some decisions where I wanted to be exactly like that person, and that person, and that person. And oh, I love that person. Like, look at what they have. Look at where they go. Look at what they do. I remember once I was really young. I must have been 15. I had a girlfriend who was a couple years older than me, and she had an older sister who had a boyfriend. So older. So he must have been in his 20s, and he was a business guy. And we went out to a lunch, and I'll never forget this moment. He pulled out a credit card to pay for lunch. And I was astounded. I was like, what is that? And he's like, this is a credit card. I said, a credit card. It almost sounded like as though I just landed on Earth and didn't even know what plastic meant, let alone a credit card. And I said, what does it do? And he goes, well, I put this, and he's like looking at me strangely, like I'm trying to joke him or something. He's like, I put this card down, and then the bill comes and I pay for it, and I then pay for this within 30 days. That's a credit card. I was like, wow, they trust you to pay that bill 30 days from now? It just blew my mind at 15 years of age. But again,
Mhm.
I had working class parents who didn't really operate that way. If we couldn't afford it, we didn't get it. If we could, we paid cash, and we didn't do that sort of thing. So for me, I just realized looking back at all of that is like I was inspired by that. So I wasn't inspired to get a credit card, although because I probably did in my teens and then quickly racked it up and realized credit cards are not good at this age of my life. But I did, by the way, I did learn that lesson several times. But my point from sharing that with you, and I think for everyone listening, is our habits, right, which are made up of, by the way, your character, your attitudes, your actions, and your behaviors. Those constitute and govern the way you are right now. So you can stay on cruise control, and you can be exactly as you are for the predictable future. Or if you're aspiring to be a little bit like that person or this person or a culmination of them, and that's just like a grade or two above or beyond who you are, now what you need to do is embody parts of who they are, right? Characterizations, attitudes, actions, and of course, dare I then say, behaviors that shape new habits that get you to start acclimatizing to that level of, well, existence, right? Experience and knowing. That's what has to happen. But most of us just don't do that. Most of us don't aspire to be like anybody else right now. We think that we're all just living the legendary life we are. And maybe you are, but if you're not stretching, you're dying. If you're not reaching for something, you're being held back. So, as it's been said by Ken Blanchard, the leadership management guru, you know, um, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. And so if you're not committing to growth, you're really just committed to the ride of change, and change will be always constant. So I think, and it happens to me sometimes. I'll say this in closing. For me, I remember getting into a point in my life where I just didn't have anyone I looked up to anymore. Everyone that I ever looked up to, I had emulated parts or pieces of them, but there was no one else left in the world for me to say, wow, I'm really inspired by that. I felt I had my fill. And that was probably the most stale, consistent existence I lived. It was the most still I was. And it's not to say that's bad. It's just to say it wasn't growth. I was just on cruise control. And it covered a period of time where I was like, whoa. And then something happened and it shook me out of that comfort zone. A falling out with a partner of mine where I ended up, giving up my half of our business, and I had to reinvent myself. And in that, I rediscovered myself and what inspired me to do something different. And it had not been for that, I don't think I would have hit the next stratosphere of my own life and existence. So oftentimes people do everything they can to avoid chaos, to avoid change, to avoid crisis, or to avoid concern, where sometimes that's kind of where the magic happens, right? That's where the personal reinvention and recalibration and recreation and all of that really does happen. You can't reimagine your life unless it's threatened, right? And I think a lot of times it's hard to reimagine your life in the heart of your comfort zone. It just is.
Yeah.
It really is. So you've got to just snap out of it and say, you know what, let me manufacture a crucible moment. Let me give myself a drop dead deadline. Let me give myself 3 months to do this, or 6 months to do that, or let me give myself to the end of the week and I've got to make a decision, a choice, a change, and do it. And see what happens. Look at who you become. And I think that's important to know.
Yeah, very wise words.
Mhm.
Very wise words. Speaking of getting out of your comfort zone, how do you intentionally challenge yourself? Because like you said, you're always growing, you're always learning. So how are you making sure you're still challenging and growing?
Well, I could say that I read all these books whenever someone's
That's
not
quite a
looking.
lot.
It's quite a lot, and I've read pretty much none of them. No, I'm kidding. I've read some of them, but all kidding aside, I got to be honest with you. That's a great question, because I think an older version of myself would say something along the lines of, reinventing yourself and recreating your life is all a function of discovering your goals and ambitions and aspirations, and that might be true. But I think the truth is, from my perspective, and I'm getting to say this from good old fashioned life and wisdom, is because I throw myself in new conversations with new people where we're innovating and we're creating new things. Um, that's where I become someone different than I was before. Just this past weekend, as I shared with you before we went into record mode, I spent a weekend with my partners in New York, and my son came along, and I had a series of conversations and meetings throughout the weekend, which he tagged along with. And he made a really interesting observation. He says, wow, Dad, I got to tell you something. He goes, I never would have imagined that the conversation you had would have been about that. And I wouldn't have never imagined that you guys would have created that possibility, or you would have created that new invention or that new innovation. And I said, but that's my point. And if your listeners are making note, I'd write this down. You know, creation only lives through conversation. So creation, or being creative, that magic, that genius is only unleashed when you're in the midst of a conversation with another. You can't do it on your own. You got to break bread, have a coffee, have an espresso, pour yourself a cup of tea, put the kettle on and pour some more. Like, dialoguing with another human being allows you to co-create. And it's not like it doesn't do this, it actually does this. It transcends the conversation. So I find that what keeps me growing, what keeps me learning, what keeps me evolving as a human is interacting, interacting, Interacting allows me to learn new things, and those new things I am happily being informed on, but integrating it into like my everyday life. So I'll apply it to a project, or I'll apply it to a team, or I'll share it with other people. So if you're not interacting, you're dying. If you're not exchanging ideas, then you're not the source of any. If you're not evolving yourself and others through conversation, then you're robbing yourself elevation. And these are all very important insights from my perspective. I'm not declaring them as the truth and it's the only truth. It's just
Mhm.
that's my experience after being on this earth as long as I have and blessed to be. So those are things I'd like to share.
Well, it's very valuable. It goes back to the basic needs of every human wanting to be seen and heard and connection so we can have a vibrant life. But going back to just conversations and really getting to know someone and being genuine about it. There's a difference when you have genuine people and have a authentic conversation. And I think there's beauty in that too. So that's great. Like, and like you said, you can always learn something, you can always challenge. And apply it to other areas of your life. So that's inspiring too.
I agree. I think sometimes, we, including me, including you, and other thought leaders on the space, and whether you're published or educated or ordained in any way, the reality is that, hey, we're not perfect. We're meant to be on this plane of existence to learn, to share, to help others, to be helped, right? To be a contribution, to love, to forgive, maybe not forget, but to forge on. And I think that's what makes the evolution of mankind so fascinating. That if we just kind of really re-presence ourselves to our originating philosophies of our founding fathers, what it took for our families to brave the waves and to cross great seas and to endure such great challenges and crucible moments to just discover a different life for themselves. Like we need to channel that for ourselves. I'm not
Yeah.
saying go climb a mountain or board a plane and head somewhere in a different direction blindly. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is like, take life on like an explorer. Take it on as an adventure. Take it on like you're Indiana Jones and you're searching for the lost ark called your life. And if you play with it that way, then it'll occur for you that way. It's an adventure, right? And every day is a discovery.
It is. When you're when you think back of all your experiences, is there a particular defining moment that drives your decisions or influences you throughout the day? Or throughout those experiences, is there a certain mentor that you always go back to that still inspires you till today?
So those are great questions. I mean, mentors and people are different. I mean, I feel like they're a little bit like seasons. Right now, this time of recording, we're heading into a festive season. Thanksgiving has just passed, and Christmas is on the horizon, and Hanukkah, and the rest of it. So there's going to be a different temperature and environment that we all live in and experience life from. So I feel like coaches and mentors and authors are all very, I wouldn't say fleeting, but they're seasonal. So there's, depending on what you need in your life, you'll gravitate towards things. So from sales to leadership to health to wellness to meditation to stillness to energy and I'm sure love and all the other things. But I think for me, there's two things I'll share. I think one for sure personally, the one undeniable shift in my own existence was definitely the moment I became a father. So for me, when I remember my son being born and I know what was out there in the world, like I knew what was out there in the world and I saw him and I know what's out there and I see him and I know what's out there. I'm thinking to myself, I know what's out there and I don't want any of that for him. And so I think a big part of my existence just bolstered to say, I am going to be the greatest mentor and trainer and coach for you. Of course I'm your father and of course I'll love you no matter what, but boy, I'm gonna build you strong. Buckle up, buckaroo, because I don't want what's out there for you. So that was one. I think the second though is really learning and understanding the importance of finding your calling. And I think that is something that has often gotten confused with the conversation around purpose, where somehow we got caught up since the 70s, dare I even say the 60s, where Purpose is something you create and or you can rediscover. And I disagree with both. I mean, maybe you can actually create a purpose, but when you look at purpose by definition, it's an aim, an objective, or an aspiration. So like when you look at, an acorn that falls on the ground from under an oak tree, like its purpose is really to be an oak tree. That's what it's designed to be. One can think that's true, but that's its aspiration, because just because it exists as so doesn't mean it'll be. It needs to be now taken and now, of course, planted and watered, and it needs so there's something else that's needed. So my assertion is that, when you think about having either a guiding force, is it purpose like over here, or is it something that pulls you out there? And I believe in the latter. I believe that in finding your calling, what were you born to do, is a function of getting really present to what turns you on, like what lights you up, like what really has you do something. And then and just in your existence, not like, your vocation or your profession or your business, but like what do you love to do, that that you spend a great part of your day doing it in servitude of that calling. Now, when I first heard the term calling, I have to be honest, it felt a little bit airy, like a bit fluffy for me. And I'm not that guy. I have an appreciation for energy, I will declare. I have an appreciation. I can walk into a space and say, energy's off. I don't know what it is. Is it chakra? Maybe. Vibration? Possibly. But I do believe we're energy beings. And
Mhm.
so I can walk into a space and say, no, there's something odd about this space. I got to go. And I've done that before. I've sat in a restaurant, said, yeah, and it could be an interaction with somebody, but I get up and say, I'm very sorry. It's not personal, but I can't stay here. My body is it's just like, it's like eating something you're allergic to and you're just having a reaction to it. So having a calling is something that just really lights you up. It lightens your load. And for me, when I first heard it, it was hard, because I thought, wow, I just don't think I'm that person. But as I sat with it and realized what's pulling me, it's really my life's intention. So if I have a life's intention, like my gifts and my history and the what I've learned and the who I am right now is for a greater use, right? And that intention is for me to be used up being an instrument for impact. So like when I see people lit in a room and writing notes and getting to learn things from me, I know what that makes me feel like. So what I live for is for that feeling. So when people are lit, I'm lit. So anything I do, in everything I do, is in servitude of fulfilling that calling, my life's intention. So anytime I'm interacting, I don't care if you're a barista, if you're checking me into a hotel, if I'm at a restaurant and you're serving my meal, or you're a partner, or you're someone who's working with me in a big way, and you know this too because you're a dear friend and client, I'm not going to leave you unlit, because in order for me to know that I was of use and service, I have to feel lit. In order for me to be lit, I need to experience you lit. So that's a really wonderful way to feel used up in your day every day, and in such a way that I don't feel like I ever really work a minute of a day. So that for me has been probably the second and most important catalyst to what's kept me on my trajectory, is, always reframing and always representing myself to, hold on, what's my calling? Given all the things I'm doing, when I look at my calendar, are these in servitude of my calling? And if they're not, they're out. And if they must remain, then I've got to find a way for them to create an alignment to that.
Oh, I love that, because you are truly, people with purpose tend to have happier lives, of
Mm.
course, and you're doing that and you're helping others do that. So all that resonates.
Hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. So what is next for you in your world? What is next that you're looking forward to, or can give little hints?
Well, I mean, what's next for me is just to continue doing what we're doing. I mean, for me, I run a group of companies called the House of Legacy, and there's various portfolios, and I've got time into a coaching portfolio that includes my authorship and intellectual properties, academia, and curricula that I write and create and sometimes lead. I've got a portfolio where there's a financing division, a bank corp. I mean, where we finance and co-venture or venture capitalize, startups. I have wealth management. I have offshore banking. I have an advisory group where we advise icons and legendary brands where we help future-proof their business and their approach to things. And then, of course, we have a media company where we work with, filmmakers where we create incredible content for some legendary people for short form need and or Hollywood release. So across that portfolio, I put my time into some of those things very carefully. And of all those things, I have a little bit of myself in each of them. And there's some that, turn me on a little bit more than others, but I am equally turned on by the fact that we make an impact across that. So I've got various chieftains of each of those portfolios. I'm involved in all, but I spend probably a lot more time in some more than others. And that's kind of cool. So for me, look, there's new programs that we're writing that are exciting. We're really excited about a lot of our financial life psychology works that are being published. I'm excited about a new book that I've written that I've been really wrestling with. It's kind of like a favorite pillow that I've been so in love with that I just don't want to let it go and let it go to press because it's like, well, hold on, I just want a couple more hours with this one. And it's like, it is such a great book of everything I've ever written. It's just by far the best thing that just makes me say, now that's what I was meant to write. So I got to say that one gives me almost teary-eyed because I'm so proud of that piece. That piece is really I think it'll be my magnum opus. It's the piece that really will differentiate me in the work I've done, but also it's 100, like Remina, when I say that 100% me, it's because a lot of us will talk and speak and share and post content that's a little bit of us and a little bit of our inspiration, a little bit of our mentors, a little bit of people that influenced us. But this book, it took me a lifetime to write. And so I feel really good about that. I feel really good about that book and yeah, that it's just great. It's on legacy. It's how by definition how we live, how we love, and how we lead defines what we leave, and what we leave defines our legacy. So it's all about really how to live your legacy. And that's really the premise. That's the premise of the book. And I'm super excited about that being released in the early part of 2025.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get a copy of it. It sounds amazing. And especially that you're still writing it and you're pouring your heart and soul into this. It's amazing. I can't wait to get it.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem when you're an author and you know this. And for those who are listening, if you've ever thought about writing a book or you have, it's like a presentation. It's like anything else that's a creative production of yours. It's not like a baby, and I don't know anything about this, but like in the ninth month, you should give birth. Right? So with a book, it's a little bit it's not the same because you don't have to publish it. So for me, I've been holding on to it. So my publisher's like, hey, how are you doing with the book? I'm like, look, just back off. I'm just sitting with the content a little bit longer and just a little more color on that for 60 seconds, if I may. For me, I think what makes me a little bit different from a lot of other speakers and commentators or influencers is until I can really experience living out the what I'm writing, it doesn't feel authentically true until I experience it. So it's like writing a recipe book of recipes that are really amazing, but you've never eaten the cooking based on those recipes. Like
Mhm.
how foolish would it be to publish such a thing? So for me, I find that in this world of leadership development and human betterment, the movement requires authenticity, and authenticity means like, hey, I've written this from my vantage point of experiencing out every single word I've published in this book. I am a living demonstration of the work that's in this book. And that's hard. I mean, it's hard. It's part of the blessing in being in this business, which is why I have a portfolio that's a coaching portfolio. I do it not because of the financial success it generates, but I do because it keeps me on my toes. It keeps my nose to the grind. It keeps me, and forcibly so, and by design, it keeps me reinventing myself. Otherwise, it'd be really easy just to be kind of cool, like that guy, whether he was in his 40s or 30s, or gosh, let's not even ever go back and meet the guy I was in my 20s. Uh, let's do us all a favor, not do that. But that's my point. So had it not been for that, for this business that I'm in, I wouldn't have gotten to evolve the way I have. So I think a big part of that is holding myself accountable to being a living demonstration of the work I lead, the stuff I teach, and whatever I publish. So that's probably been the most exciting part about it all.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my goodness. So, if you could share one last thought, anything, life lessons, um, maybe tie in how financial psychology ties into everything, whatever last piece of words, wisdom you would like to say.
Well, you said two things that are a little bit polarizing. I mean, we can talk about your financial life, and then we can talk about parting wisdom. So that's a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to do my best to bridge them both because I want to
Okay.
include them both because you've referenced both those things a number of times today.
Mhm.
And that is, I think that for anybody, I mean, big or small, young or old, sometimes we really measure our success based on stuff. And rare do we actually base our success on significance, like really making an impact, really making a difference, like really shifting one's world. And so that's why when I came up with these distinctions around what makes up one's financial life, like if that's the scoreboard, let's just say that is, well, what is the scoreboard? Like if you had a lot of money, would that make you successful? Well, by that measure, you might. But I've met a lot of people with a lot of cash, but they've been, spiritually poor. And
Mhm.
so money is just currency. And it could be also credit worthiness, but it's possible to have a lot of money and still not really be rich in the things that matter. The second distinction, though, to one's financial life is wealth. Now, wealth is the shiny things, right? Usually. But it's the house, it's the cars, it's the nice haves. It's usually anything that shines or blings is the nice thing. So wealth, I've seen many people with enormous, obvious wealth, but they have no cash. They've been cash poor. And it's possible to have someone who has a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of wealth either. And that's possibly true. So those two distinctions are two ways to understanding the scoreboard. But it's only until you get into your later years that you realize that the real financial life worth living for, one that is whole, complete, and performing, is what I would say is your worth. And worth is defined by the value you give to and get from life. So that life worth is not just about the value you create for others, but how that ends up in turn making you feel better. It's a function of your control over your own time, the power of choice, and the freedom to choose. So it's being able to say, you know what, I'm taking off the next 3 months and we're going to travel Europe, or you know what, I'm going to work from home this summer, and I can do that. Or it's like, you know what, why don't we just take a vacation, book no return flight, and we'll think about how we'll get back home when the time is right. For a lot of people, we don't think about that kind of worth until it's often too late. We sacrifice so much of our life worth for the sake of money and wealth when those things don't give you your time and they don't give you your freedom or the power to choose. And I love that this new shift in our generational thinking is that we've kind of awakened to the realization that, you know what, I don't want to be that kind of dad, and I don't want to be that kind of mom, and I don't want to work as hard as they did, and I don't want to sacrifice as much as they did. And it's not to undermine the value of their sacrifice because that's all they knew to do to get us where we are. But now that we have that advantage, now it's like, why don't you live the life of your dreams? So my parting wisdom, if you can call it that, and I'm grateful that you've allowed me to say so, is if that is the scoreboard, if really growing a great financial life is a function of measurably having more money, more wealth, and more worth, the question is number one is, are you clear on those three distinctions? Number two is, do you have a healthy relationship to measuring each of those? I mean, money, wealth, and worth. Worth also includes the power of freedom, the power of choice, and the time to do as you want. But you need health. You need livability. You need very sound sleep. You need great longevity and the ability to, in fact, have a good, healthy wellness and a relationship to that. In order to enjoy the time away, you need to be able to enjoy the time away. So it's not just a function of money and wealth. It's a function of understanding the totality of what makes your life worth living. So worth is a very, very charged metric that we often measure too late, right? And it's often at the expense of having said, well, I've got all the money now I need, and I've got all the wealth that we require. One point I'll say, and I'll shut up. My son's the most amazing thing in my life. Most amazing. And maybe I'm present to it because we just spent a whole weekend together, but I'll share this for your sake. And so you're lucky, because if we had this conversation tomorrow, I wouldn't be as present to it. But what I realized is like, wow, I wish I had like more of him. But I had him in my early 30s. And the reason why, here comes the admission, is I always believed that in order to be an effective father, I had to be able to provide. So I really was trying to time becoming a father when I had all the money I needed and I had all the wealth I felt I required to be an effective dad. Now, this didn't become clear for me until my son was of about maybe 15, 16 years of age. And he was in my office just right here. And he's like, hey, Dad, what's up with all these books, man? Those are like, that's a first edition Shakespeare this, and that's a first edition of Hamlet that. And I said, son, when I knew you were coming, I built a collection of books so that when I pass on, you'd have these books. In fact, here, let me show you something. You see this watch? It's a part of a collection that you'll take, my watch collection, when I pass on. In fact, here, walk with me for a second. I showed him this collection and that collection. You see, when I was going to be a dad, I remembered I wanted to be the kind of dad that left all the kind of things I would hope that my dad would leave me, that would have communicated that I was worth saving those things for. My son at that age said to me this, Dad, that sounds good, but truth be told, I don't need books or that collection or even a watch. I just need you. And if you just get that, let's just sell all this stuff and focus on our relationship. And I thought, how profound, how profound being present to that. That was such a good moment. How profound of a moment where I was doing things selfishly for me, given my ego and my disposition with judgment and my own sense of fear. Meanwhile, I took my eye off the prize. So I focused all on this money and all on this wealth, when the reality was, in focusing all this time and effort and energy on money and wealth, I lost track of what was worth living for, what was really worth my life. And for all of you, I think you got to take the things you likely have taken advantage of for a long time and pause for a moment and ask yourself, have I been making sensible, sizable investments in ensuring that my life remains livable? And if you can do that, that, by the way, is one of the first laws in the new book of Laws of Legacy. Being able to do that, it'll allow you to represent yourself to the new responsibility that you've got, but also equally the new responsibility that you have.
That story was just so profound because, it's a good reminder too. It's a good reminder as parents, and then going back to getting lost in the daily grind, right? Getting lost in the daily grind. There's more worth tied to the people in your life. And that often, as a parent, it's your kids, it's your kid. And like you said, sometimes we get lost in growing, working all the time and wanting to provide and have them taken care of even after we pass. But meanwhile, the present moment, that's all they want is us. That's all they want. And us to be our best and to be there. And that, I think, in itself is so valuable. You can't put a price on it.
No, 100%. I agree.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Richard. This has been so great. And I just enjoy talking to you. And I'm so glad that, we get to have a friendship and work together. And it's great. So I am truly honored for you to take time and have this conversation with me today. A genuine conversation.
Well, and I love that. And I just love and want to acknowledge you for just, having the courage and the commitment to seeing it through and having a lovely conversation that not only inspires you, but and will trust that will inspire those who follow you and who trust you and who love you and are cheering for you. And for those who are listening, please know that. I mean, at the end of the day, you, Dr. Remina, have asked me to do this because you care about those who are following you and you want to bring them additional value. So with that, it was an honor to do so. So thank you so much. Love to you and your kids. And I'm grateful for the time, and I'll do it anytime with you, anytime.
You're so amazing. Thank you. And of course, anything I can help with, I'm just a phone call away.
I'll write my list. I'll get my list going.
So I will link your website and Instagram and everything to the show notes, and enjoy your time with your son. I can't wait to hear more stories, what y'all decide
You
to
bet.
do next.
You bet. You bet.
Well, take care and have an amazing day.
You too.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, share with your friends and family, and of course, subscribe. Thank you so much for your support.